We probably could get to a world where it's like AI versus AI, where you have the offensive AI trying to break in and defensive AI that is trying to stop things. These things are going to move really fast.
Today we have Jaime Blasco, co-founder and CTO of Nudge Security.
I got really excited about technology when I was 10 years old. We didn't have an internet connection, so I would go to a cyber cafe, and after years, eventually, things started to click. I learned how to code, how to hack. They wanted to learn how hackers go get into their systems, so I would just get paid by companies to just hack them. As a kid, it was kind of a dream, right? Late 2022, one day we wake up and GPT releases, and the whole world changes. From that time, we're living in this new crazy world. Everything is moving 3 times as fast as before. Who has the better model? If they do have access to better models, they're gonna have better offensive capabilities. If we don't solve that problem, China will probably get ahead. From someone that has been fighting Chinese hackers for the last decade, I know what's gonna happen.
Welcome back to the Keep Us Insecure podcast. This is the podcast where we sit down with leaders, innovators, and founders of some of the most exciting cybersecurity vendors out of the Austin ecosystem. Today we have Jaime Blasco, co-founder and CTO of Nudge Security. Jaime, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Elliot. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. It's long overdue, this one.
I know.
For sure. I've been seeing you around in Austin for a long time. Everyone says amazing things. So yeah, pleasure to have you on. And I guess for the audience who maybe don't know who you are, would love to have an introduction.
Perfect. Yeah. So Jaime Blasco, CTO and co-founder of Nudge Security company here in Austin, but with employees all over. My previous life, I was at a company called Alien Bolt for a few years, a lot of years, almost a decade. But yeah, most of my career, I've been focused on threat intelligence, threat detection, and really building technology to help organizations be safer.
Fantastic. Looking forward to unpacking a lot of that in the podcast today. I think everyone who's been in the security market for the past 10 years knows Alien Vault and the amazing stories that have come off the back of that. I know that you originally got into security back in, was it 2004, if I'm correct?
Yeah, early 2000s, I would say.
Early 2000s. Tell me how, I guess, first of all, how did you get into the industry?
Yeah, so at the time it wasn't really an industry, right? And if we go even before that, as a kid, I was a very a different kid to some extent, right? Like I got really excited about technology from even when I was 10, 11, 12 years old. I remember we didn't have an internet connection, so I would go to a cyber cafe and download documents, bring it home and read them, and I didn't understand anything. After years, eventually, things started to click, right? I learned how to code. I was learning how to hack, do a lot of hacking. I'll get into like chat rooms in IRC and other places early on and just meet people and learn from them and exchange knowledge. And, some of these people are actually still my friends, right? Like some of the early, hackers back in the day from the 2000s. But yeah, that's pretty much how everything started. And then, when I was around 15, 16, like I have some friends that were a little bit older. They have some consulting businesses. They needed some help. And, I started just doing contracting work for them. And, it was the early days where, there was no cybersecurity industry, right? It's like some of the larger organizations were starting to look at cybersecurity, and they wanted to learn how, hackers go get into their systems. So I would just get paid by companies to just hack them. So like as a kid, it was kind of a dream, right? Where you just get paid to do what you like. And that eventually developed into a business, and ultimately started my own business after that.
Amazing. And that would have been back in, was it Madrid you were living at the time?
So at that time, I was living in a small city called Segovia in Spain. I was born in Spain, so I grew up there. So it was like a tiny company, like a tiny city, like 60,000 people. So.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I can't imagine there would have been a big buzzing cybersecurity community at the time. But no, amazing. And obviously wanted to talk about Nudge Security, your business. Recently raised Series A. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about that journey. Why was it born? What problem are you solving?
Definitely. So, after Limbo, we were acquired by AT&T. I spent a few years there and, learn a lot from, big organizations and what things are different. Me and my co-founder, Russ Spittler, that also was at Limbo and AT&T, he started to think about what was next. And, one of the areas that we were always surprised by when we were at AT&T is like how hard it was to introduce new technology, right? If you wanted to introduce, a new offering, a new product, especially from a SaaS, software as a service perspective, it will take so many approvals, so many security reviews, and we started to dig into that process, how it works in other organizations. It's like the reality is actually quite the opposite, right? Like we are seeing a world where the technology adoption is happening really fast, and it's happening bottom up. So your employees are adopting that technology. Sometimes, or most of the times, IT and security teams are not even aware that that technology is being adopted. So we saw an opportunity, even at that time, 2020, 2021. I feel like most of the businesses have already invested a lot of resources in endpoint security and cloud security. The meteoric rise of Wiz and CrowdStrike during those years. But then SaaS, it was kind of like still underinvested, right? And we felt like the adoption piece of that and the third-party risk management piece of that adoption was really a huge opportunity for us. More importantly, I think it was the approach, right, where traditional network-based approaches haven't really worked and scale in that world where, the perimeter, there's no longer a perimeter, right?
Yeah.
Like things are everywhere. Your data is in a bunch of different SaaS applications. Like your laptop probably doesn't matter anymore, right? If you get rid of your laptop tomorrow, all your data lives somewhere else.
Yeah.
All your access lives somewhere else. And like that perimeter approach of like network-based companies or even endpoint companies wasn't really good for this new approach in terms of like how do you protect that new world.
Yeah, and I can imagine, as you've alluded to there, the market has changed so much, probably even since 2021 when you founded the business. How has the thesis of the company evolved through that time as well? Is it the same? Is the business today exactly what you're expecting when you set up, or is it what have been like the nuanced changes as you've been growing the company?
Yeah, absolutely not, right? when when you start a company, kind of like you have a rough idea, like kind of a direction, and then you start, getting some early customers and learn from them, and like you take a slightly different approach every time, right? So I think in terms of the direction, we are still on the same place, but in terms of like how the business looks like, it's somehow different, right? I think some of our early assumptions have been validated, which is good, right? Which is, if you look at 2024, 2025, like some of the biggest cybersecurity moments have been defined by breaches on third-party vendors, especially in the SaaS ecosystem, right? We saw a lot of times Okta got breached. We saw, all the Snowflake campaigns where attackers were exploiting Snowflake tenants to steal information. We saw more recently a couple of, vendors that integrate in the Salesforce ecosystem, Drift, Salesforce, where, attackers will compromise that company, steal the auth tokens to access a huge amount of customers from that company. So we have seen that focus on third party and SaaS security has been validated by a lot of these breaches. And then late 2022, like one day we wake up and ChatGPT releases and the whole world changes, right? Well, from that time, like we have seen every week there are new developments, there are new companies that show up doing very interesting things around your data, but now your employees are adopting that technology even faster. They're bypassing some of those controls. They're connecting all these integrations together. Now all of a sudden you don't know where your data lives, who has access to your data. So AI to some extent has made this problem even 10x worse than it was before when we started the company.
Yeah, and as a business, you definitely leverage AI and have invested heavily into AI, particularly over recent years. What's caused that, and what have been the benefits to the company?
Yeah, 100%. I think, you know, I truly believe like there are two type of companies today, right? The ones that really embrace AI and the ones that are gonna be a screw so sooner than you expect, right? If you don't change the way you do things as soon as possible, you're likely gonna be out of business in a couple of years, right? And it's the difference between betting your company on AI, trying to redefine all the processes and workflows that you have, not just from an engineering perspective, but anything that touches your company, right? From procurement, finance, product management, marketing, sales, everything. And then you have the companies that are kind of like, well, waiting for the right time. They're kind of like, well, when this thing kind of works, I'll adopt it, and they're kind of like, dinosaurs. And I think if you don't put all your eggs on how you change your business, you're gonna be in trouble. So we've seen a lot of progress, especially on the coding side of things. We are trying to invest as much as we can, as I said, in everything that touches the company, right? How we interact with customers, how we mine the data when we interact with those customers, what are the learnings what we get from customers, what are the analytics when they use the product, what do we need to build next, how do we build it, like when we build it. It's like you really need to redefine everything. Now, this sounds great, but there's a lot of problems, right? The main problem is humans, right? Which is like we as humans really suck at changing, right? Like we are creatures of habit. So people that have been doing their job for 20 years are having a really hard time changing the way they think and the way they do workflows, right? So I think the biggest roadblock that we have seen, and when I talk to other founders and other companies, is the same, which is how do you get people to change their mind so they start to use these tools, so, like all the time. And it goes beyond chatbots, right? Like, yeah, everybody talks to ChatGPT. I'm talking about redefining how you do everything in your daily job.
Yeah, because I think like ChatGPT 2 years ago wasn't really a thing that many people used, and then coming into the start of this year, people saw it as more of like an intelligent Google, whereas now people are building businesses off it and using and like leveraging the capabilities to evolve the company and level up their team and so on and so forth. So it's really interesting. Just going into Nudge and from like a customer perspective as well. So I know from your business focusing more around an enterprise play, like a lower to mid enterprise, closing some amazing customers. What would you say, and is it what you expected? Kind of like, what are the most common surprises that new customers have discovered when they've been using Nudge, obviously prior to being involved with the business?
Yeah, I think one of the most surprising things is we heavily invested on that time to value, right, during the POC, the trial, where we try to prove our solution extremely quickly, because people don't have a lot of attention span, right? So you wanna hit that as quickly as possible. And the first thing we give you, right, it says that visibility into your whole ecosystem, like every single SaaS application integration, a third party that your employees are using. Usually when you talk to, even some of the most sophisticated organizations out there, they kind of give you a number of how many you're going to find. And then that's usually 3, 4, 5x that number, right? And then they are like, well, but, the most important applications, all of them are behind single sign-on, or they have these security controls. It's like, well, not really, right? It's like 30%, 40%. And the list goes on and on. It's like, how many of those vendors have gone through a security review? Like the number keeps getting smaller and smaller, right? That's I would say that's the one that is, pretty much it doesn't matter the size of the organization. This problem is happening. Different skills, no matter how big you are, right? Certain industries are even worse, like high tech. High growth tech startups are probably the worst, where they have been growing like crazy. They've been adopting technology like crazy. Not a lot of controls over that technology, and that creates, that really makes this problem really, really hard. And then, there's so many anecdotes, right? Of the other theme is there's always how many ex-employees that people that have departed the company or that you have fired, or still retain access to certain applications, right? We see that over and over again, where the offboarding process is not really that great, and these individuals still have access to a lot of that a lot of that data and tools in the environment. And then more recently, that AI use case, right? Which is like, we talk to all these enterprises where they have heavily invested on some like top down enterprise chatbot, like either Microsoft Copilot or whatever it is, or OpenAI Enterprise. And then when they will deploy our solution, they find there's like 100 others that are the ones that actually people are using, right? Which is like, you try to push this Copilot thing to people, they don't like it. They're actually finding the tools that they like, and they're adopting them. And actually, you should embrace that, right? You should be there with them. You should enable your employees to do that in a safe way, and that's part of like the ethos of our company.
Yeah, no, it's super interesting and exciting business, exciting market. I think next year is going to be, well, this year actually, because this is going to be getting launched in January 2026, is going to be a big year. What would you say is going to be in store for the company?
Like obviously, especially for my investors out there, like the growth trajectory, right? Like we're gonna try to maintain that growth trajectory. It's been great so far, and we expect to keep it like that, or even improve it, right, with the new funding. From a technology perspective, we have an amazing roadmap, right? That we built internally and also in combination with our customers, and trends that we see in the market. I feel like with AI, like every week feels like a year, right? Where the amount of developments of new models, new tools, new capabilities, it's incrementally, and from a business perspective, being able to help my customers understand that, and reduce risk, while we're living in this new crazy world of like everything is moving twice or three times as fast as before. That's where we are focusing on our efforts.
Yeah, fantastic. And very much looking forward to seeing the success of the business in 2026 and onwards. It's exciting times. I guess moving through your experiences and journey, I think we'd be crazy not to have a little conversation about Alien Vault and some of the amazing stories that have come off the back of that. I know there's a lot of great people in Austin who've been through that journey as well alongside you. I know we had Roger Thornton, for example, as the first episode of the Keep Austin Secure podcast. Talk to me a little bit about that, because that was a unique business, wasn't it? It was Spanish, American. You were there from the early days. I guess, how did you get into the business? And tell me a little bit about the journey.
Yeah. So crazy journey, right? Like, so Alien Ball was a Spanish company, was founded by Julio Casal, Dominic Carg, and a few others in Spain. Like I pretty much like ran into Alien Ball like randomly, right? So like I had lunch with Julio Casal one day. I can't remember the details how we ended up having lunch, but like, I wasn't really looking for a job, right? And after when we were having lunch, like Julio really convinced me that it was a really special company. And I still remember, like he said, Jaime, one day we will be in the U.S. and we will be trading in the stock exchange. And I was like, oh wow, like I mean, I was like 19, 20 years old back in the day. So I was like, oh, this is, it never crossed my wildest dreams that actually some of that will become true, right? Like I will be in the US, like we quite not trade in the stock market, but who knows? Maybe one day we will. But I think he did a really good job, like selling the future, and he was like, he was right to some extent, right? And I'm super lucky of having had that conversation with him, because I think that was the unlock to my career, right? Like being able to join Alien Ball early on. I was one of the first employees there. First we were serving kind of like the European market, but then we started as an open source company. And we will have all these, amazing people in the US, like, the US Army and, NASA are like huge organizations using the open source version. And we saw a lot of traction, right? And at the beginning, we're trying to sell like training and, some consulting and support. But after a while, we decided, hey, we gotta build, an enterprise version that we can actually sell. So then Julio and team kind of like got in contact with Alvaro Yepes from ForgePoint. He was like the first like investor from the US that kind of like found the company, invested, and then kind of like didn't force that, but almost like forced like the team to move to the US, because like it was back at the time it was really hard to sell to a US based company from Spain. Like, right, like you had to be crazy about it, right? Like I think like nowadays that's expected, but back in 2018, 2019, like no one in their in their wildest dreams will think that you can do that. So we like Julio, Dominic, and team moved to the US. I followed them shortly after, and you know, ultimately the original founders left, and Alvaro and team brought a new seasoned team from executive team from the US, and that's how I met Roger Barmack, and the team. Raz, my co-founder, also came from that. They have started a company called 45 before they sold it to HP, and they were kind of like looking for the next thing. And Alvaro was able to like bring the whole team, CEO, CTO, head of product, etc. And that was kind of like a pivotal moment for Alien Ball, right? Which was like going from like a Spanish-based company to early, US-based, like bringing some seasoned team that help us really, change the business and grow the business in the US, up until the point to when we sold to AT&T in 2018, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. I can imagine that was a crazy ride and a lot of different nuanced experiences than most vendors experience building in the US or coming from Israel to the US. Spain already becoming an established business, transitioning, moving over, changing the executive team. A lot of change in there, but I'm sure it was a great ride. And I can imagine having that exposure to folks like Roger and Barmack at such an early pivotal time in your career would have been absolutely amazing as well. Learning from those guys and how they operate. What would you say if I asked you one favorite or like standout memory from those years at Alien Vault? What's like the first thing that comes to mind?
Yeah, I think for me was, I just had so much fun, right? Which, I was really passionate about what I was doing. Like, I was mainly focused on building all the research and development and, especially threat intelligence teams. Like most of my career was really focused on that, right? Which is like finding the bad guys, understanding the bad guys, and translating that into business outcomes. How do I help my customers really, find them in their networks and protected them? Through those years, I had so many good memories around, doing research or in some of the most sophisticated adversaries out there. It was the early days where, not a lot of public research will happen. And I will just like, even when I was living in Spain, I will just publish a blog post about a Chinese, espionage, actor. And like, I will get all these haters like, what are you doing? And like, then, after a few years, that became like the role where like most of cybersecurity vendors will will publish an analysis of the campaigns, etc. But back in the day, like I got a lot of haters of like, what are you doing? You're not helping. And I think the industry has changed a little bit, but I just had a lot of fun doing that, right? Like, those were kind of like the golden years of, cyber espionage where, China was hacking every single company in the US. You have Russia also acting pretty badly. Iran, North Korea. Like I did a lot of work on the North Korean hackers that were behind the Sony hack. So like so many amazing stories around that. Those years.
Yeah. And I can imagine there's a lot that you've learned from that experience that you've taken into Nudge today, and how you and Russell build the business together. What would you say if I had to ask you again for one lesson, or like what was would you say that like the biggest lesson that you learned that you take from that Alien Vault experience that you take into Nudge today?
Yeah, I will say, the one that many times I come back is like, I love technology, right? I like we all love technology, and we get really focused on, what we're building, how we're building. But at the end of the day, none of that matters, right? Like what matters is it's like, okay, you're building great technology, but if no one wants it, if you're not solving a real problem, it doesn't really matter, right? So like changing as a person that loves building and building products, like changing that mentality in terms of like talk to customers, understand what their pain is, and then think about technology. I think that's really the unlock for that. If you don't do that, you're likely gonna get in trouble. You may get lucky, right, where you build something and people like it without ever talking to anyone, but that's really unlikely, right? You're gonna have to start from the problem all the way to the technology. That will probably be the one that I will focus.
Yeah, I think Roger had mentioned that in our podcast as well, that he kind of put it quite bluntly around no one really cares about your product. He said if you've got a really nice mum, she might just about care about your product, but people care more about problems and their pain points and what keeps them up at night, not how fancy or shiny this technology is that you've got. And I remember he was saying about one of the recent ballistic portcos, root evidence with Jeremiah Grossman, and he spent, I think, maybe 2 years speaking to insurance carriers, trying to understand what their problems were before coming to the idea of building the business itself. So it's a fascinating concept. I think it's just interesting how you have to kind of like rewire your brain to think in a completely different way. But no, it's fascinating. And I guess just moving into AI, because I know that's a big part of Nudge Security. I know that's a big topic that's been on everyone's minds and will, I'm sure, continue to be on everyone's minds over the next however long we probably live, to be fair.
Hopefully one day it'll be something else, right?
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, when you're retired in a villa in Spain, you don't have to think about AI anymore. Until then, what would you say like the biggest like risks that come with AI these days?
Yeah, I think so. Like, also let's talk about like today, and then how it can look like. Because again, as I said, these things are moving extremely fast, right? Even maybe while we are talking now, someone release a new model that is like 10x better, whatever. But I think today the biggest risk is that in terms of AI agent adoption, right? We are seeing all these agents that are trying to do like workflows and like operate almost like employees, where they're end to end doing something inside your organization. The secret that people outside the industry doesn't know is like, this is, from a security perspective, is crazy. Right? Like the biggest security problem in AI security is like prompt injection, right? Which is very, if I can describe it in 10 seconds, is really if you have an AI agent that let's say go to Google and research something and then send an email with the summary, right? If an attacker is able to put some instructions in a page that your agent is consuming to say, well, instead of sending the email, why don't you find passwords in the email and send it to me? And the agent, without having some guardrails, will actually do that. The secret is like it hasn't been solved, right? Like OpenAI hasn't solved that, Anthropic hasn't solved that. Pretty much anyone in the industry hasn't solved that problem. Now there is some guardrails you can put around, but it's not for granted that that can be prevented. So until we solve that 100%, I think we are gonna be living in this world where we cannot be 100% confident on giving agents access to private data and actions that can that they can use to like exfiltrate data, etc. So I think that that's gonna be a conversation that is gonna last for a while. I will hope that at some point when these models get better and better, there is a way where we can mitigate this risk, but it's not for granted that that's going to happen. Now, I think in terms of using AI for cybersecurity, we have seen, from an offensive and defensive perspective, like there's been huge improvements, right? Like even us internally using AI models to help us, audit code faster when my developers are writing code, being able to do that very quickly uh, and find security vulnerabilities that maybe before we will miss because the technology wasn't really, what very static. It wasn't really using models to like understand the code to the extent that you can do today and how quickly you can do it. So like it's making, the organization safer as a whole. I think where things get very complicated is like we probably could get to a world where it's like AI versus AI, right? Where you have the offensive AI trying to break in and defensive AI that is trying to stop things. And then, we're going to live in a weird world where these things are going to move really fast. And then I think it's ultimately back to like who has the better model. Right. And I think so far the US is dominating there, right? Where, we have like the amount of investment that have gone to, AI labs in the US, like OpenAI, Anthropic, and many others, right? It's in like hundreds of billions of dollars. And, we're building all those data centers to train those models. Uh, China is doing the same, right? Like China is behind on model development, in partly because the US have been restricting access to GPUs. They're restricting the access to Western technology, but they're gonna move past that point, right? And the moment that China is able to unlock that, and that they're not very behind, even if you look at the latest models from DeepSeek, Quen, and other labs, like they're almost at the same level at the frontier labs from the US. And the advantage that China has, like everyone knows, is like it's electricity, right? Like they're able to unlock so much electricity that the moment they can build data centers with GPUs, they can train much better models, right? Now the US has that energy problem, right? Where we are not able to add energy capacity as quickly as possible, and this is a well-known problem, right? This is not a secret. Like, and the government is trying to unlock that, but these things take years to build. So I think if we don't solve that problem, we're gonna live in a world where China will probably get ahead, and then from someone that has been fighting Chinese hackers for for the last decade, I know what's gonna happen, right? If they do have access to better models, they're gonna have better offensive capabilities than the U.S. And we're gonna live in a world where there is an imbalance, and hopefully we don't get there. But that's the scenario that really that really worries me from based on the last decade of working in these industries and understanding how certain countries behave in cyberspace.
Yeah. What do you think? I know it's probably impossible to answer really, but like what do you actually think is going to happen over the next 2-3 years?
I mean, it's if I could make a lot of money if I could predict like that. But yeah, I think that is scenario that I described. It's a possibility. I think obviously the U.S. is ahead, and it's gonna continue to move ahead. There's also like like two camps today of like, oh, AI is moving too fast, like these capabilities are getting exponentially better. But then there's like the doomers that are like, well, like this is actually bad, but also like it's we are hitting a wall in terms of like capabilities. I live somewhere in between there, which I think is the models are getting better. I think before we were scaling from a pre-training perspective, right? The way you train the models, but now the labs have unlocked other capabilities like cross training and the thinking models and other ways of like unlocking capabilities and improving those capabilities. But we don't know. Maybe like
Mm.
next year we hit a limit where those models don't get any better. That being said, I think that if we don't make any more progress on the models as they are today, the amount of productivity gains and the amount of GDP that we can unlock from those models, it's crazy. Because like as we were discussing before, I think like a lot of the adoption hasn't really happened yet, right? Like you have all these industries that haven't even touched AI yet, and once they implement AI, like the amount of productivity gains is gonna be insane. So I think even with the models today, as if you stop that development, we will get so much improvements.
Yeah, and imagine where those improvements are going to go over the next 2-3 years. Almost every single industry is going to be completely different, isn't it, than what it is today? And like I said, a year, 2 years ago, AI was just a buzzword, really. So no, it's fascinating. It is fascinating, and I'd love to talk a little bit with you about Austin. I guess one of the reasons why we're doing the Keep Austin Secure podcast, to raise awareness for this amazing city. I moved here in February, so just coming up to 10 months now, and been so welcomed into the city. The cyber scene over here is amazing, and some great people like yourself who've really kind of championed this community that we've got. So I guess first of all, when did you move in? You were in the Bay Area, if I'm correct, and then moved over to Austin. When did you make that transition?
Yeah, so I was in the Bay Area for like 7 years more or less, and then 2018 is when I came to Austin. Like before that at Alienable we had an office here since like 2012, 13, something like that. So I've been coming to Austin for a long time, and at that time I would say like things were not that great from a cybersecurity perspective. There was a lot of, there are some people, right, like Rapid7, there were a bunch of companies, Dell SecureWorks,
Cellpoint,
some ecosystem. But if you compare it to the Bay Area, it was like night and day, right? Like I feel like the Bay Area, even today with all the changes after COVID, it's still, a very special place, even in my heart. Like I love that place, and I think it's just such a unique place on earth that it can really get replicated for much that we try.
Yeah, definitely. How have you found like the transition since moving over here?
Yeah, but very different. A couple of things of reasons why we moved here. Right, one, it was Bay Area became super expensive. It became somehow unsafe. Right, like obviously everyone. I was living in the city in San Francisco. Everyone knows there's a lot of issues with safety, especially those years and during COVID and after COVID. I'm hopeful that that can be solved, but until it doesn't get solved, it's a no go for many people, especially if you're trying to start a family, right? And that's what I see from some of my friends, which is they wanted to start a family, and like it was really hard to do that in the Bay Area, especially in San Francisco, from a safety, and also it's a very expensive city, right? In terms of in terms of accommodation, in terms of like childcare, it's extremely expensive. So that's the other reason. And then obviously COVID happened, and Austin got crazy, right? Like everyone wanted to move here. Like great weather, set for summer. Just don't come here during summer. But after that, you have like great weather. Like the food is great. The music scene is great. The airport can get better. That's the only concern that I have, right? I think even though I'm closer to Europe than I was when I was in San Francisco, like it feels like the airport is not as good. So like it even take me longer to get to Europe than before. But yeah, in general, I've seen even a lot of my friends from the Bay Area moved here during that time or shortly after, and a lot of them founders, and we have like I probably know 20, 30 cybersecurity founders in Austin, and many of those came from the Bay Area.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. How have you found like the cybersecurity scene and ecosystem and community change since you moved over here, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, definitely has gotten better, right? Like, again, there were some companies, and there were especially some individuals that maybe were working remote. Like, there's a it didn't start from scratch, right? But obviously, since COVID, it has become better and better. You know, Google open offices, like some of the security team was here. Apple did the same, and that also enabled some people that maybe wanted like a change of scenery to just like work from here, even with companies like SpaceX, Tesla,
Mhm.
Google, Apple. So like it has opened opportunity not just for like startups, but also like the broader ecosystem.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it's fascinating. I think there's a lot of people who are in the city who've moved over here in the last year to or post COVID really, who are doing so many cool things, but there's maybe a little bit of lack of visibility from what I've seen to like other folks in the city, or maybe you'll be a founder of a business or an executive within a certain company, but because you're so focused on your own journey and your business, maybe you sometimes forget to lift up your head and think who else is around you. And I think as you start to unravel and unpack who's in the city, it's actually quite fascinating how many businesses are actually over here, or at least executives who are based here or who've moved on from other organizations and kind of started to live over here. So we're buzzing about what we've been doing from a community perspective, because there's new people coming into different events and being able to meet people and play pickleball with yourself as well. No, it's fascinating. And I guess obviously you've been building Nudge out of Austin. Russell, he moved from Austin, didn't he? Is he
Yeah,
in
he's in the upstream New York.
upstate New York? And how many people do you have in Austin today?
I think Austin is probably like 10 to 15. I can't tell the exact number, but something
Yeah.
around
So you got a
like
nice hub over here. How have you got any advice for founders who are coming into the city, who are looking to, whether they're coming in or maybe they've left their business and they're looking to launch and build a bit of a hub in Austin? Any advice that you have for folks who would be looking to do that?
Yeah, I think like get to some of the local events, right, and meet people. Like you guys throw some great events, and like there are some VCs that are doing the same, and other communities. Like try to get to those, meet people. Ask for help. Like I think people are really helpful and nice in Texas and in Austin in particular. That are willing to help you, and just reach out to me if you are a cybersecurity founder and you need some help and you're moving to Austin. I will be happy to help. But yeah, I think in general, like people are super helpful. So just ask for help, and I think you'll find a great place here to start your business.
Yeah, fantastic. And just to wrap things up as well, we always like to do a couple of quick fire questions. Um, so I'll just go through a couple of these now. Yeah, give me the honest, raw responses to the first thing that comes into your mind with these, Jaime. So, yeah, first of all, growing up in Spain, who was your childhood inspiration or hero?
Yeah, I grew up like reading a lot of sci-fi, so a lot of my heroes were really like not real. They're just like like fictional characters. So so I like one that I can think of is like Sari Seldom from the Foundation series, like the guy that invented like psychohistory. Like I was always fascinated by how you can predict the future of communities and populations based on statistics. Like as a kid, that was something crazy that I think I still think about up to this point. Yeah.
Amazing. And what did you want to be when you grew up?
I was always talking. I when I was growing up, I was fascinated by like most kids, right? Like the universe and stars. So I had my telescope and I look at stars. So I always said I wanted to be an astronomer, like it didn't happen. But I feel like that's something that when you grow up, it's always like fascinating.
Yeah, there's still time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
No, perfect. If you could change one thing about the cybersecurity industry today, what would it be?
I think it's becoming very marketing focused, right? Where like so much investment has happened, and a lot of it is going towards like marketing first. And when I started in the industry, like it was quite the opposite, right? It was very focused on community, very focused on helping each other, just like the hacking community, really, like all those roots. And I feel like we have lost that a little bit, and hopefully, we can reverse course to some extent.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to throw a curveball question in now. If you were trapped on a desert island and you could only bring one person from the cybersecurity industry with you to survive, who would it be?
From the cybersecurity industry, okay. I don't know. Like I there's a lot of cybersecurity people that can help me in a desert island. I also like Kevin Mandia, just because like he probably can figure out like to get someone from the government to get us out of there or something.
um, keep RSA in San Francisco, yes or no? If no, where would you do it?
Oh yes, no, keep it there. I mean, I have had so many memories. I would say so many people I have met that it will be crazy if I cannot do that every year. Even like, we all hate RSA, but at the same time we all love it. So
Yeah, amazing. And final question, probably the most important question: favorite barbecue spot in Austin?
I have to say Terry Black. So yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's my favorite too. Amazing. Well, Jaime, thank you so much for coming on today. It's been a pleasure. Really enjoyed the conversation. Congratulations on everything that you've been building so far with Nudge and the success that you've had in your career. And super excited for what 2026 and onwards has in store. Thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Cheers, Jaime.
Take care.